A few weeks ago, I was sitting in the kitchen reading the news when I saw a deeply disturbing headline: 60% of global wildlife species wiped out. The article is based on information from the Living Planet Report 2016. The report stated that species populations of vertebrate animals have decreased in abundance by 58% between 1970 and 2012. That number is expected to increase to 67% by 2020. This is nothing short of horribly depressing, but there has to be something we can do, right? So why is our planet dying? The same report pointed to 5 major causes: habitat loss and degradation, species overexploitation, pollution, invasive species and disease, and climate change. We have to start somewhere, so let's start with the first point: habitat loss and degradation. The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear those words is the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest is one of the world's largest carbon sinks. This means it absorbs massive amounts of carbon dioxide and converts it to oxygen. Carbon sinks are an essential part of the biosphere in general, but their role is more important than ever since human activity is increasing CO2 emissions. Unfortunately, around 20% of the Amazon has been lost to human industry. So let's recap. Wildlife species are disappearing at an alarming rate. One cause of this is habitat loss and degradation, and one reason habitat loss and degradation is so severe is that the Amazon is being deforested. If the Amazon wasn't being deforested, then habitat loss and degradation wouldn't be as severe, and wildlife species would fare better. So how do we stop deforesting the Amazon? Well, first of all, why are we deforesting in the first place? There are several reasons, but one main one: cattle grazing. More than 60% of the land cleared in the Amazon is converted to pasture for cattle grazing. So let's go back to the original question: what can we do? Most of us aren't politicians, so we can't pass legislation regarding cattle. Most of us aren't millionaires, so we can't spend lots of money on ad campaigns against the industry. Most of us aren't even South Americans, so we can't vote for people who will work to reduce deforestation. There's only really one thing most of us have in common that can help us: we eat beef. Think about it. When is the last time you went 2 weeks without eating beef? 1 week? A few days? Americans are the world's biggest beef consumers, eating more beef than the entire European Union. So what would happen if we ate less beef? Well, let's take a look. 80% of the beef we consume in the US comes from 4 companies: Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef. It just so happens that 2 of those companies, JBS and Cargill, have cattle and grain operations in Brazil and other parts of Latin America. JBS, which is centered in Brazil, is the world's largest meat packing company. Cargill, in addition to its cattle operations, has massive soya operations in the Amazon, exporting the grain around the world to feed cattle and other livestock. If twice a week, every American were to switch out beef for something plant-based, like pasta or rice for example, it would be a major blow to these companies' profits. Americans ate 54.2 pounds of beef a year in 2014. What if that number went down to 40 pounds, and instead of switching to other meats, we switched to plants? A cut in consumption that severe from the world's biggest beef consumers would leave the companies no choice but to downsize, cutting back on production and output. Expanding their cattle grazing and grain operations in the Amazon would no longer be profitable, and the companies would have to stop and even shut down some of the current operations. So what would happen then? 2 companies downsizing may sound marginal, but these are 2 major players in the region, and stopping their expansion would go a long way to stopping the destruction of the rainforest and eventually reversing it. This would allow the forest to continue converting mass amounts of carbon dioxide into oxygen, which would in turn lower the amount of habitat loss and degradation in the world, which would then be a big step towards stopping the decline of our planet's health. And what does it take for all of this to happen? Switch out beef for pasta once a week. Environmental degradation sounds like such a terrifying, large-scale issue that it can be hard sometimes not to feel helpless. But by looking into the causes of the problem and what we can do to help ameliorate it, we can make the changes that will make our planet survive.